Hello and welcome back to Christie's Cozy Corner. And today we are talking about Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson, the third book in the Stormlight Archive, because yes, I have finally finished this behemoth of a book, and standing at over 1,200 pages, this is now officially the longest book that I have ever read in my entire life. And you know what? I'm pretty proud of that, if I do say so myself. I mean, it did take me like 2 weeks to finish it, but that's besides the point. So I feel like I'm like the last person on the planet to read this series. But if you also have not picked up the series yet, then maybe don't watch this video because it is going to be completely full of spoilers. Because this video is definitely not a review or anything. I'm basically going into this video assuming that you have already read Oathbringer because I will be explaining like nothing. This video is really just me reacting to this book and a lot of the things that I wanted to talk about and just sharing my overall thoughts in general. One small caveat is I'm definitely like not an expert in the Cosmere by any means. I've only read each book once, with the exception of Mistborn Era 1, which I read twice, but I read everything like pretty spaced out, so maybe a lot of like the little details and Cosmere references kind of go over my head because I just don't remember them and I just don't connect the dots. So don't come at me if I talk about something that's supposed to be like super obvious and you're like, oh my god, like does this girl even read? How can she not notice these things? I'm sorry, okay? Okay, so my notes of some of the things I want to touch on are over here, so hopefully this will keep me in check and not end up being too rambly and not just turn into me constantly going like, and another thing, because that's definitely what would happen if I did not have these notes. Anyway, last chance now to click out of this video if you have not read any of the Stormlight Archive yet, and especially if you have not read Oathbringer, because like I said, I will spoil everything. Okay, so first off, Sadeas being dead, good fucking riddance. That man was just so insufferable. I wanted to like him so bad in the first book. Like, you know, some of the things that he said and did like kind of made sense and you can kind of see things from his perspective. But the more that he showed up and the more things that he did, I was just like, I don't like you, sir. And honestly, I just love how in the chapter where his death was discovered, it's called One Problem Solved, because that is totally accurate. And the fact that Adolin is the one that has to lead this investigation, but he is the one who killed him in the first place, I was just like, oh god, no, you poor bastard, what have you gotten yourself into? But I love Adolin so much for being the one to do it, and especially because he's this character who's supposed to be all like noble and straight-laced and, you know, adhering to all these codes, but then he goes and does this thing, and I'm like, you are going through character development. And speaking of characters who are supposed to be straight-laced, Dalinar, I have been waiting for his backstory, and the chapters in this book that go into his backstory are some of my favorites in this series. They were just so enthralling and kept me so engaged and guessing like what is going to happen. Because I feel like in the first book, in Kaladin's flashback chapters, like you already knew what point it was leading towards, and there was like a little bit of a twist here and there, but not so much that you didn't know where you're gonna end up. And in the second book for Shallan's backstory, I don't know if everyone saw that coming as well, but I pretty much called everything that happened in her past too. So again, it wasn't like all that surprising. But Dalinar, like the whole thing with his wife and not remembering her name or anything about her is like one of the most intriguing mysteries to me of this series. So I really wanted to know what happened to her. I just love how we begin this series being introduced to Dalinar being like this really noble, righteous man, and now you get this complete 180 with his past self. So I wrote in my notes that I cried a total of 3 times during this book, but honestly right now I don't remember what the second and third time was. But the first time I definitely remember, and that is when Kaladin reunited with his parents, and it was just such an emotional scene. The way they were shocked to see him, and his dad was like, my boy, and I'm like, that kind of thing always just gets to me every single time. And I did not expect them to introduce him to a new sibling, and oh my god, I loved that scene so much. Like Kaladin discovering that he has a little brother again. Obviously, it's not going to be the same as Tien, and there is no replacement for Tien, but it just represented like this sign of hope, which is just exactly what Kaladin needed in his life. He has been through so much, and I'm just so happy to see like something going right for him for once. And I think it was like somewhere in this chapter where he had that conversation with Syl, where Syl revealed how, you know, sometimes she likes to like sneak in on people while they're having some kinds of fun. But Kaladin was trying desperately, but unsuccessfully, trying to banish the image of him like in bed with a woman and Syl sitting on the headboard like cheering them on. And it just brought the most ridiculous imagery to my head. Like I can just imagine like Kaladin, you know, doing that, and Syl is just like, are you sure you're doing it right? Like her face doesn't seem like she's enjoying it. She looks like she's in pain or something. And this is one of those scenes, and like one of the reasons I mentioned before in, I think, my TBR video. Was it my TBR video? No, it was my August wrap up, where like sometimes it's so hard to believe how grand and epic this series is when you have these completely ridiculous out of left field scenes that just make you laugh so hard. It's honestly like 12-year-old boy humor sometimes, and I don't mean that in a bad way at all. I mean that in the best way possible, because I obviously love it. One thing that I didn't really love though was how long Kaladin was separated from the rest of the group. Like for the first half of this book, there were barely any interactions between Kaladin and Shallan and Adolin, and I'm just like, why? Shallan and Adolin need their boyfriend, even though he did return and they were in scenes together, but like they had no interaction, and I'm like, why? And on that topic, I am a firm believer that if Sanderson had wrote this series like maybe a few years later, when he's maybe a little bit more progressive, they could have totally been a throuple. They should have been a throuple. But no, they're not, because Sanderson is a coward. But you know what? In my headcanon, the three of them are a throuple, and nobody, including Sanderson himself, can change my mind about that. Oh my god. In this book, I also started feeling so bad for Alucard. Like that scene where Dalinar and all those people were having that meeting, strategizing on what to do, and Alucard is just like in the background, so inconsequential. And at the end of the meeting, he approaches Dalinar and basically is like this sad little lost puppy. He's just so sadly pathetic and has this inferior complex, and I really didn't expect me to start feeling things for Alucard, and we will definitely get to more of that later. So I read Words of Radiance in like February or March earlier this year, so it hasn't been that long since I read it, but still I was really surprised at the amount of things that I forgot, like some pretty important plot points. Like I completely erased the whole Ghostblood storyline from my brain. Like I did not recall a single thing about them and who Mraize was, which is like a pretty big deal. And also the fact that Kaladin was the one who killed Shallan's brother. I remember being so mind blown about that in Words of Radiance, and then when I read this, I rediscovered it and I was like, oh my god, that's right. He did do that. I totally forgot.
Number 5 killed my brother.
Oh my god, I forgot about that part.
So I thought that there would be, you know, like a little bit more of a fallout between Kaladin and Shallan when she discovered that he is the one who killed her brother, but it didn't really end up becoming anything. Like it kind of just like faded away, which makes sense because like how can Shallan blame Kaladin for it? Like he was just doing his duty, and you know, this is just kind of the thing that happens in battles and wars. So like I get it, I guess, and I am kind of relieved that they didn't end up like fighting over it or anything, but still I was just kind of like, oh, like, okay, that's it, I guess. So the fact that I already forgot so much about what happened in the previous books, I fully blame that on my brain just being too full of Adolin all the time, and there's just not enough room for all the other information, because oh my god, I just think about Adolin so much. I love him. He's just this happy-go-lucky golden retriever of a guy who's just happy swinging around his sword. He's just a little guy. And I mentioned this to my friend Caleb, and he was like, this is totally normal. First read of the series is exclusively the Adolin experience. Only on reread do you realize that there was a whole epic fantasy plot in the background. And you know what? Facts. Okay, one thing that annoyed me, the freaking Stormfather, like the whole thing about this character or this whatever, it's like one of the tropes that I dislike the most, and one of those things that just annoy me the most when I read is like this character who is purposely vague for no reason at all except to just like serve plot purposes, because that's exactly what he does. He's like, I can tell you this because it's convenient for what you need to know right now, but I'm gonna hold back some of this other information that I can totally tell you now, but I won't. But I'll reveal it later when the plot becomes convenient to do so. And I just really don't like it because it makes everything so contrived just to fit in the plot. And also, again, how convenient it is that he's like, by the way, just so you know, I can bring other people into your visions for you if you want. And Dalinar's like, what? No way. Okay, let's do that. Oh my god. You mean I could have been doing this the entire time? But oh, we're just gonna do it going forward because, you know, I couldn't have revealed this information too soon. Like, okay, whatever. And then when he brings Navani and Yasna to his vision for the first time, this is probably like my favorite line in this entire series because of just how ridiculous it sounds. Where Dalinar is like, welcome to my madness, ladies. Like, obviously I know he doesn't say it like that because like how creepy would it be if he said it like that? But that's just like how I picture those words spoken together. Welcome to my madness, ladies. So stupid. I'm so sorry. We also got some chapters in the perspective of some Bridge 4 members, which was really great. And oh my god, Teft, his chapter just completely broke my heart. Now I remember, I think his chapter is like when I cried for the second time because Sanderson just did such a good job with conveying the desperation and hopelessness and self-loathing that Teft felt, especially at the end of one of those chapters when they finally found him and they're like, Teft, where's your coat? And he's like in complete disbelief, like, I sold my coat. Like the thing that meant so much to him and the brotherhood of Bridge 4, and he sold it just to get one more hit. It's just so sad, and I think that chapter was just so well done. And speaking of Bridge 4 POVs, we also got a Moash POV, and honestly, I could have done without any mention of Moash ever again. Like, okay, when I first started this series, I knew that people hated Moash, but I didn't really understand why. Like, yeah, he betrayed everyone in the second book, but you know what? I felt like I could have kind of understood him and where he was coming from, like the things that were done to him and his family. Like, yeah, I understand why he would want to seek revenge. So I'm like, you know, like I don't get why everyone hates Moash so much, but oh my god, now I get it. And you know what? We're just gonna skip right on ahead to where I freaking started to hate him so much. And that is when Alucard died. Right. This was the third time that I cried. How could I forget that this was one of the times that I cried? Oh my god. My reaction is probably definitely not anything unique. Like most readers, I did not care a single bit for Alucard in the first two books. Like he was this whiny, annoying little pissy pant, and I'm just like, this, whatever, you kind of suck, okay, as a king. But then in this book, like for me to have that opinion of him and then turn around so much in this book and legit have his death be one of the most devastating deaths that I have experienced is just crazy to me. And again, just like a testament to how great of a writer Sanderson can be. Like his death was truly tragic, and the way that it happened, like the image of it, him kneeling down on the ground, holding his son in one arm and in the other hand desperately clutching that piece of paper of the sketch that Shallan made of him. Like it meant so much to him, like believing that this is the man that he could be, you know, like the man that he wanted to be and the one that he could have been if only he was given the opportunity. Like, oh my god, so much potential, and him in the middle of saying the words, he was so close, and Kaladin is just like say the words, Alucard, you're almost there. And then before he could finish the final word, Moash is just like, fucking Moash! Oh my god, that scene was so powerful and moving. And then Moash just comes and cuts him off. So yeah, fuck Moash, man. Anyway, oh my god, I'm getting way too worked up. I need to calm down a little bit, and I'm getting all sweaty because I'm getting so worked up. So anyway, on to something that I like a little bit more. Back to Adolin. So I don't know how everyone else feels about the Shadesmar chapters, but honestly, I really loved them. Like, I loved exploring that side of the world and meeting all of these different kinds of Spren and seeing what they look like on the other side. Like how Anticipation Spren in like Roshar show up as these little like tendrils of ribbons or whatever, and then when you go to the other side, you realize that, oh my god, those are freaking tongues from like these really weird looking creatures. And I don't know, it's just so funny. Kind of reminds me of like yokai in Japanese mythology, where there's like these whole hidden other forms that you can't see. And I also love to see like how these friends interact with one another and the different cultures. Like, it kind of reminded me of Starsight by Brandon Sanderson, the second book in the Skyward series, and that part of Starsight is like one of my favorite parts about that book. So yeah, love Shadesmar, and really hope that we get to see more of it in the next books as well. Anyway, I think I was talking about Adolin. Oh right, it was during a scene in Shadesmar when Shallan was being really down about herself, and you know, he's complimenting her art, but she's like, but I'm a light weaver, and maybe like I don't deserve to be praised because apparently light weavers are like really great artists, and you know, this is just like her innate talent that she didn't really work for. But then Adolin was like, no, don't say that about yourself. Just because these kinds of things come to you a little bit easier than someone else, it doesn't mean that you didn't work hard for it. And then he brings up how, you know, he is well built, tall, has a long reach, and yes, that does put him a little bit ahead when it comes to being a swordsman, but he still worked really hard on his craft, and it doesn't mean that he doesn't deserve what he achieved. And honestly, we just love a man who can recognize his own privilege. I thought I was thirsty over Adolin, but Shallan is on like a whole different level. Like, literally every interaction that she had with Adolin, she was like, oh my god, his hair is so cute. Oh my god, his voice is cute. Oh my god, he's so adorable. And I'm like, girl, calm down. But I also love how Pattern is also like really enamored with Adolin. It's just like, yes, more love for Adolin for all the haters out there. Also, I don't really understand like all the hate that Shallan gets as a character. Like, when I read the first two books, I was kind of guarded when it came to Shallan because I'm like, okay, I know a lot of people don't like her. I don't want to get myself too attached to her in case like she does something that I really don't like and end up hating her in the later books. But the more I read about her, I'm just like, why don't people like her? Like, I think Shallan is great. Like, okay, some of her jokes and some of the things that she says to be witty are like a tad cringe and annoying, but like, it's not even that big of a deal. And there are a lot of scenes with her that are like legit funny. Like that one scene where she's like, I need to research all these like different kinds of corrupt Spren in the city. So she tries to conjure up Shame Spren and does it by making a complete fool of herself in front of everyone by like accidentally on purpose tripping, completely exposing herself and her safe hand and being embarrassed about it. And that's how she conjured up the Shame Spren. Like, that was such a great scene. So you know what? Like, screw it. I'm just gonna say it. I love Shallan. Okay, so I said that I was gonna stick to my notes so I'm not like all over the place, but then I just realized that my notes themselves are all over the place. So I'm gonna be jumping back and forth on like a bunch of different topics because I'm following my notes. Anyway, I know I already talked about Dalinar's flashback scenes, but I think I'm kind of going in like chronological order. So it's around this time now where we see him just get worse and worse, and you fully understand like, oh, this is why people call him Blackthorn, and this is why people call him a tyrant. They are completely justified in how they see him. And like, I really didn't know what to expect when it came to his wife. Like, the reason why he wanted his memory erased, I thought legit was because he loved her so much and he couldn't deal with the pain. But then it turned out like he really actually didn't love her at all, and he treated her so horribly. And you're like, oh my God, like, this is completely different than what we were led to believe. And again, that's just what makes this reading experience so great. And then that scene in the rift where everything goes down, that was horrifying. And Dalinar himself was so stupid. Like, he was like, oh, they're sending messengers? I don't give a fuck. Kill them. Like, there's no way anything they could say can actually be important. Oh, I remembered this place. This was like a hiding spot last time I came here, so I'm not even gonna go see who's inside. Let's just kill whoever's in there. But wait, you're over here. I thought I killed you in that cave. But if you're over here, then who is in the cave? Oh my God. Like, fuck, man. Anyway, I just think it's really sad that he never loved Evie at all, and he did not deserve her. We also met Captain Azure, and I was so intrigued about her. Not gonna lie, I have a bad habit of Googling things, especially if they're things that, like, I felt like maybe this is something that I should have already known, but I just forgot because I have such a bad memory. So sometimes I'll Google it, and it ends up being a complete spoiler, and I'm like, ah, crap, why did I do that to myself? So when I mentioned to my friends that, hey, like, this Captain Azure person is pretty intriguing, they were like, for God's sake, do not Google her. So I was like, oh, okay, I see what's happening here. I'm picking up what you're putting down. So now I finally understand why people are like, you need to read Warbreaker before you read Words of Radiance, because I read Warbreaker like 9 years ago and I do not remember a single thing from it. So I completely did not get that Zahel, if that's how you pronounce his name, is actually Vasher. And I was like, holy crap. And then it turns out that Azure is actually Vivenna. And I'm like, oh my God, like, I love these characters, okay? Even though I don't remember anything about Warbreaker, I still remember really loving these characters, okay? So I was so excited to see them. And then also, speaking of Warbreaker, Nightblood. Nightblood is so cute. I love him so much. I don't know. And I know that technically Nightblood's voice is like genderless, but in my mind, whenever he speaks, I hear Bill Cipher from Gravity Falls. Okay, now we're getting close to the end now, and the big reveal in this book was that humans ended up being the Voidbringers after all. Humans were the baddies, and I'm just like, I fucking knew it. Like, when we found out at the end of Way of Kings, or maybe it was in Words of Radiance, I don't remember which book, but like, we found out that the Voidbringers were Parshendi. I'm so sorry, why am I doing this? So we found out the Voidbringers were the Parshendi, and I'm just like, no, I'm not buying this. It's way too obvious. There was way too much like foreshadowing that would lead us to believe this. I'm like, it's too easy. It can't be, because like Kelsier says, there's always another secret, and what do you know? And this is one of my favorite tropes, where you find out the side that you were on the entire time were the baddies after all. And ooh, it just creates like so much conflict. So like I said, I am not super well versed in the Cosmere and like everything that's going on, even in just Stormlight itself. When it comes to the world building, I'm kind of just like taking things as they are. I'm not thinking like too hard about it and not trying to piece everything together and make sense of everything, because honestly, like, I don't know if I can. And one thing that I love about Sanderson as an author, and what I rely on him to do, is that when he wants you to know something, he will beat you over the head with it until you know without a shadow of a doubt, like, this is what it is. So when it comes to like the whole Spren thing and like cultivation and honor and odium and all that kind of stuff, I'm just like, I don't know what's happening there. Like, I'll just wait until everything is revealed and then you can tell me what it is, like, point blank. But anyway, one thing that I just want to say for the record, so like, we have honor Spren, like, of honor, and cultivation Spren, which is of cultivation, which is like the mother of that witch thing, and then you have the void Spren, who are of odium. So those are the facts. But now that we know that, like, what is the deal with Lift? Because her Spren Wendell is a cultivation spread, and then they hinted at stuff about how she feels like linked to cultivation or something, and she went to that thing to like get her powers, and like I don't know, like how she got her powers or whatever. So I'm like, what is going on here? Like, maybe it should be obvious to me already, but I still don't know, okay? So I'm just gonna keep reading and try to find out. Okay, so that basically sums up all my thoughts and reactions to Oathbringer. And before we close out this video now, I just want to note a few other specific scenes and notable quotes that are my favorites. First of all, no mating. Love that. Obviously, Syl spying on people in the bedroom. That scene where Adolin brought Shallan like a tub of water for washing, but she's like assuming that it's, you know, clean, so she drinks it, and Adolin is like, I washed my feet in that. Obviously he didn't, but I was like, that's so random. Old guys shouldn't have tight butts. That one scene where Taravangian was in his smart era and there were all those children singing and he didn't want them to sing anymore, so he was just like, kill the children, and the children were just like all of a sudden stop singing and all the music spread suddenly disappeared. That was so funny. Alucard, he's determined to save the city. Most days, Alucard has trouble saving face, let alone cities. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, but it's so true. He's so sadly pathetic. And honestly, Wit is right. He really does grow on you like a fungus. And I'm still so sad over his death. Like, I can't get over it. It's one of the saddest deaths that I have ever encountered in a book. And you know, that's saying something. Okay, this one line where Adolin says to Kaladin, he's like, you talk like a girl sometimes. I mean that as a compliment. Like, what even was that conversation? It's like one of those random things. I was just like, this is the epic fantasy that everyone's praising all the time? Where? Ooh, also, the fact that they have like a span read information network and people are just sending in like the latest things that they heard and everyone's talking about the same thing. It's like this gossip hub, and it just makes me think of like the website in Gossip Girl where they're like, spotted, Dalinar Colin claiming to be receiving visions from the Almighty. Has old age finally caught up to the tyrant Blackthorn? XOXO, Gossip Girl. I'm so sorry, that was so cringy. I think that's pretty much it. Oh right, and one more thing. And another thing. This book opens up with the chapter openings in the beginning have like quotes from Oathbringer, and they were just like the most inane, vague lines possible. And every time I read them at the beginning of every chapter, I was just like, get to the fucking point. Like, what are you even saying? How can you use so many words to say so little? And then we find out at the end that it's Dalinar writing his memoir, Oathbringer, and I was like, oh, it's Dalinar. Dalinar is writing this. Get to the fucking point, Dalinar. Alright, that is officially it now. Oh my god, I had so much fun filming this video, just like gushing and just getting all my random jumble of thoughts out there. So if you have stuck around to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. And I assume that if you watched up to this point, you've also read Oathbringer yourself as well. So let me know down in the comments what you thought of this book. And now that I have finished 3 books in this series, I would put my ranking as Words of Radiance first, Oathbringer very, very, very close second, Oathbringer maybe like 1.5, and Way of Kings after them. So like 1, Words of Radiance, 1.5, Oathbringer, and 2, Way of Kings, because like I really love all 3 books, and it's so hard to pick a ranking. And speaking of which, I heard Oathbringer is like a lot of people's least favorites, but like I clearly loved it. Anyway, yes, that is it for this video now. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in my next one. Bye!